Café and Networking Podcast promotes successful business owners, business experts throughout the world. I'm Tom Reaoch, known as the King of Networking, connecting people from my unique communication lab in Brazil. Today we talk with Donna Wayles, joining us from Cranston, Rhode Island in the United States. Donna Wayles, the author of I'll Pray For You, a Christian woman's guide to surviving domestic violence. She's a speaker and she shares her vulnerability as a domestic violence survivor and the red flags of abuse that she missed. So Donna, what can someone do if they think they are being abused?
So a dear friend of mine pointed out to me that my relationship, my marriage wasn't healthy, and I just couldn't imagine it. But they said I was acting differently when my now ex-husband was around, and I didn't notice any difference. But my friend said that I was more stressed. Mm-hmm. So you may feel like something is really wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it. That's that gut instinct, that mm-hmm. real, if you think there's something wrong, there probably is.
Right.
And so one of the points that I learned was that intimate partner violence or domestic violence isn't always physical. It doesn't mean that you have bruises.
Right.
There can be mental or emotional abuse, verbal abuse. In my case, my now ex-husband was using my spiritual beliefs against me. Mm. Well, God says you have to do this, that, or the other thing because I'm the husband, I'm in charge.
Uh-huh.
And, so those spiritual or cultural types of abuse. And then there's the sexual abuse, expecting sexual favors in my response to, oh, I did the dishes for you, now you need to do this for me. And mm-hmm. I went, that's not right.
Right.
That's that bargaining or that obviously abuse.
Coercion.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But it can also be as simple as financial abuse. Mm. Keeping control of all the money and wanting to know where I am all the time and not allowing me to answer the phone or answer the door. All of those things are exhibits of controlling, coercive is a great word, controlling behavior. And so those were the red flags that I missed that now I can look back and say, wow, that was awful. How did I, but that becomes a sense of normal because you don't know what's happening behind your neighbor's closed door.
That's an interesting point because what you mentioned is that other people see and feel what's happening. Mm-hmm. All right.
Absolutely.
They're getting, it's front page. Once you're in a relationship like that, and back to that point, culturally, religiously, whatever, many women, many persons feel that that's the way it should be for whatever reason. So they're actually suffering without realizing what's happening. And the points that you mentioned, the financial, the economic dependence, the sexual, mm-hmm. mental, physical, they sort of all tend to come into play. It's generally not one thing.
Right, and they all interact. Mm-hmm. There is, the United States has a national domestic violence hotline, and there's a lot of information there that's really good. But one of the things that I really read from there was given to me was the power and control wheel. And it talks about the different types of abuse, and it gives specific examples. And I looked at that power and control wheel in my own life, mm-hmm. Try looking at it with my domestic violence victim advocate. And I realized that was like reading my life in words that I couldn't express.
Right.
And, sometimes, like I said earlier, the gut instinct is right. You just don't know how to put into words what you're feeling. And so that really helped.
Well, that's another point you bring up. It's, I think it's difficult to get out of it while you're in it because you're boxed in, and you don't really know where to reach for help, or if you can reach for help.
Absolutely, and so not giving spoilers from my book, My ex-husband stalked me, and his military command really protected him. So I was living in hiding, and I didn't know who I could trust. He told the arresting officers that he would kill me. He would finish the job if he found me.
And that's true. Here in Brazil, what happens, unfortunately, the same thing. Many women are actually murdered by their spouse, their friend, whatever, because it comes to that. So when the signs are out there, something needs to be done. And here in Brazil, back to your point of how do you get help, here I live in a condominium, and here we are sort of required to, if we see anything happening that could be considered domestic violence, to report that. So
Right.
you shouldn't be just a silent partner in what's happening. Say, well, that's not my business. It's everybody's business. It's a social problem.
Oh, it absolutely is. But when my now ex-husband assaulted me for the final and biggest blow up, no one in my neighborhood saw anything. No one was home. No one answered their door. No one helped me. It was a ghost town when all of that was happening, with the exception of the one friend that I had called, because just in case she was
Right.
my friend who I would call.
Right.
And I think everyone needs that one person that they can trust, that will just, no questions asked.
Right.
They will
That's a friend.
come pick you up. Absolutely.
A friend, the description for a friend is no questions asked.
Absolutely.
The others are acquaintances. That's it.
Or just social, like you said, acquaintances, or just
Right.
social contacts. But this woman actually spent the whole time that I was being assaulted. I'm not sure how I held my cell phone up to my ear, but I could hear her with two phones, one telling me that she was getting help, and the other one I could hear her talking to the emergency operator, saying that she's hearing domestic violence and that she's hearing a woman being hurt and get there quickly. And I just, true friends like that are just very hard to come by. But if you can find someone that you can absolutely trust, that doesn't need to, you can share whatever you can share, but
Right.
but the idea is that needs to be a safe place, a safe place for someone to go.
Your personal hotline.
Absolutely.
Very good. Well, Don, I want to thank you for sharing your story. Where can our audience find your book and find more about you?
So my website is www.authordwayles.org, and Wales is Wayles. And you can connect with me on Facebook and Instagram. I am on LinkedIn. And then you can get my book on Amazon or other online retailers. Thanks so much for the opportunity. This has been a great discussion.
No, Donna, this is a global problem. All right, it's a global situation. And many times that I understand what you've gone through, we think, and you may think it was just you. And many times you feel that you're not the victim, you were the cause, right? So you tend to fault yourself. But this is a worldwide problem. Women are abused constantly everywhere for any number of reasons.
Right.
And it has to stop. And part of the stopping is what you said. Everybody needs their personal hotline. They need somebody of confidence and trust that they can relate to. That may be the biggest challenge, is how to find that person, how to find that out. As you mentioned, in the States, you have a hotline. Here in Brazil, we have something very similar. There are ways that women or men, anybody, because this is not only a female challenge, men are abused as well.
Absolutely.
So if you are being abused, and hopefully, I know in Brazil, in the States, other places, you can find help. You need to take the first step, and that's probably the most difficult step to take.
It absolutely is. And it's actually the most dangerous step to take, because leaving just makes the problem so much bigger, because that abuser is losing their control and their power over you. And that first step, although it seems monumental, I am so much better off now than I was. But that first step was just, I lost everything. Everything that I knew.
I understand that, but you also gained everything. You've gained yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
When you gain your self-respect, that's priceless.
But that first step was really difficult, and then the rebuilding begins. And I can tell you that I'm so much happier today. My daughter, who was a year and a half old when all of this happened, is now headed to college in like 2 weeks. She'll be 18. Life is just good. And I get to share my experience so that other people hopefully don't have to go through all of the trauma and things that I went through. And so if I can help someone else by sharing my story and bringing that domestic violence out of the shadows and into the light, like you said about, people, this happens all the time and it shouldn't.
Right.
That's the importance of this.
Well, thank you again, and congratulations on what you're doing.
Thank you.
And for our listeners, Café Networking is brought to us by Focus MI Market Intelligence, an agricultural market research specialist in Brazil. More information at focusmi.com. Thanks for listening until the next time here at Café and Networking Podcast.